Hey folks, Carrie Byrne, the founder of the Long Distance Grandparent Society, is doing 2 webinars next week on June 1st and June 2nd. These webinars are all about how to strengthen relationships and nurture bonds with grandchildren from a distance. It's for anyone who has grandchildren aged 2 to 10. You can join her for this free information-packed webinar to learn about 5 key areas to focus on and also to find out how to use snail mail to have even more fun on your video chats. Carrie does fun demonstrations of games to play that don't require any fancy tech. As a bonus, she will host a question and answer period where you can ask her anything about your long-distance grandparenting journey. I have personally benefited from Carrie's webinars and her online membership program. Grandmas and grandpas are very welcome to attend. If you've been looking for ways to stay connected from a distance, take an hour next week and attend this fun webinar. You're not going to regret it. Carrie has been a researcher in the area of aging, families, and care for over 20 years. She shares evidence-backed ideas for connecting and guarantees that you will leave with ideas that you can try out right away. After you've listened to this episode, please go to my website and check out the show notes for the link to Carrie's webinar. And I hope to see you on one of those next week.
Do you also find it difficult to build up a meaningful relationship with your grandchildren at a distance? As a long-distance aunt to a 2-year-old in Australia, I wanted to create solutions for the millions of family members who cannot be physically together all the time. This is why I created Peekabond, an app that helps you to connect with young children at a distance. The app works with the following 3 steps. First, we give playful activities suggestions that are based on your child's development stage. These suggestions are science-based and gamified. Secondly, you can create a private family circle. And finally, we'll let you send videos back and forth so you don't have to be live at the same time and save them in one spot for your grandchild to watch. We've got over 120 content suggestions. You can build a love bank for your grandchildren. And if you go to the Cool Grandpa website and look for the affiliate links, sign up for a newsletter with a lot of inspiring content, or you can try the app for free.
I am fired up that we've got Nathan Andersen on the Cool Grandpa podcast. Now, the reason I'm fired up is because I've been talking to a lot of grandmas and grandpas, aunts, uncles, adults, pretty much everybody. Almost everybody I talk to discusses with me that they've got a family history they want to write about, or they've had an experience that they want to document, or they want to make sure that they get down in book form key points of family history and ancestry, right? So I've got Nathan on here, and he's going to help unpack all the different publishing, editing, book creation topics that sometimes really stump us and cause us not to move forward in developing our projects. Whether those projects are going to be a great first novel or they're going to be a multi-generational family history that we want to pass down to our children and our grandchildren. So Nathan is also helping me out with my first book, which is going to be a children's book. And we're in the process now of moving the book over to the illustrator. And so I'm excited for this project to come out because 1, I never thought I would be doing a book. 2, I never thought I would be writing a children's book. So you guys are going to be in for a treat. If you've been sitting there and you've been thinking about either creating a great work of fiction, a novel, a novella, a collection of short stories, or you've been thinking about documenting your family history and needed to know what options are available to you besides maybe just sending it to Amazon for publishing on demand or trying to get a big-time publisher to get interested in what your work is, Nathan's going to solve those questions for us. So without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Nathan. Hello, and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. Hi, Nathan. Welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I am so excited to talk with you today about this cool topic about publishing a book and everything that goes into it, because I know, similar to myself, there's a lot of grandfathers and a lot of people in the audience that have an idea for a book but maybe don't know where to start. And we've certainly all heard about self-printing on Amazon and going to Simon & Schuster, or it's really confusing. So I'm happy to have somebody on that can help maybe clarify some things for us, as well as talk to us about the services that you work on and that you offer.
Thanks, and I appreciate you, reaching out to me and letting me be part of the program. It's an exciting topic. I do enjoy meeting self-publishing authors and sharing this information because it is overwhelming, and I've had to learn it all by myself. So I've been there, and that's why I started a business, is to kind of help authors publish their works and get their works out there. Yeah,
well, and what I'd love for you to do is give us a little bit of background about how did you get into writing and how did you start that process? What did you walk down the avenues in Paris one day and got inspired by Fitzgerald and Hemingway and were like, I'm going to be an author? Or how did that start?
It's I'll take it back to when I'm 2 years old. How about that? No, I'm just kidding. But in all jokes aside, I mean, I through my elementary school, I loved creative writing. I was not a great English. I wasn't great at grammar, wasn't great at English, but I had the creativity. I could tell stories. I love the creative process. And then I guess it was around 20 years old, I got into photography, and I'm like, hey, this would be a cool book. And I started writing this one book, which I never finished, never put that out or anything. And then a little bit further down the road, I had my daughter. Her name's Priscilla. And it's funny because I meet authors all the time that will tell me, oh, my first book is inspired by my kid or whatever. And it's funny, but it's so true that our stories and stuff are inspired. Oftentimes the first books are inspired by people we love and people we know. So even your book, is kind of up the same alley. But my daughter was born, I was humming this lullaby, just kind of making it up. And every night when I hum this lullaby to her, it got longer and longer. And I'm like, this kind of would be a cool picture book. And so at that time, I was in Taiwan teaching English. I was managing an English school, and we were teaching English as a foreign language to children. And so there was that, and then just my daughter being there, and I was just like, what a great time to find an illustrator to work on this book and present it as a gift to my daughter. So that's kind of how I started. I mean, even though I've been liking the whole creative process this whole time. I'm also an illustrator myself. I don't have the time to illustrate, but in high school, I was in honors art. And right now I have illustrated one of my books, and I've got some other ideas that I'm illustrating. But currently my daughter and I were actually illustrating a really cool book. I'm excited about it. It's not going to come out anytime soon because it takes time to illustrate. So, but I have that background as well. And so with all that aside, being out there, I don't know, I just went for it. And so I published my first book, self-published my first book, mostly for my daughter. And then while I was in Taiwan, I decided to, do a second one. And I did this it was a cool idea. We took like vintage circus posters that were in the public domain where let's say they were damaged, and I photoshopped them and stuff to kind of clean them up because I have that background. And then I wrote a story around those circus posters. So that was my second one. And then the third book was I did another circus one, the sequel to that one. But then I had this third book, which was funny because that idea just came from me. I was asleep. I read one book. I don't remember the title of it. It's one of those interactive books. Are you familiar with those interactive books?
Is that like the Choose Your Own Adventure?
Not quite. Okay. I know. It's like it's called. I don't remember, but it's like splatting paint and stuff. And an interactive book is where you're touching the pages and you interact with the book. So let's say it tells you to say something like, say hello to this guy. Oh, hello. Comb his hair or whatever. I mean,
or it might have like
kids...
a zipper or a button or something that you manipulate.
Yeah, those ones are more, I wouldn't even know if those were, I mean, that's interactivity, but oftentimes the ones they're not the ones that are, you're physically touching stuff, but there's nothing special on the pages. It's more, so I guess in a nutshell, my book's called Little White Cat. And it starts out with this little white cat, and you tell, you say in magical phrase which makes him big, then you splat some paint on him, and anyways, as the child does all these things from page to page, they feel like a magician. So for example, there's a thing of black ink on the left page, and they put their fingers in it and they just kind of pretend to sprinkle it, but as they turn the page and they see that it looks like they sprinkled, it's kind of like, wow, how did I do that? So that's kind of the interactivity I'm talking about, not necessarily the zippers and stuff. But I read this book, I went to bed, woke up at 4 a.m. with this idea. I couldn't sleep. So I went to the computer, started writing it, and then I illustrated it because it's such a simple concept. I illustrated it in about a week. And it's a lot of people say it's one of their favorite books that I've written so far. So you can be inspired by people you love, by ideas, by other books. I mean, and things like that. I have a Google Docs, Google Docs.
Right.
I have probably 20 books on there that, I would love to publish, and I'm not sure which one to go first. I'm like, okay, this one's so good, but I really want to do this. And so my last book, I love dragons. My wife's Taiwanese, a lot of dragons in the Chinese culture. I just wanted to do a dragon book. So that was my last book. And that one's a big hit. I really love it. It teaches compliments. And
what's the title of that book that you woke up at 4 a.m. and then took a week to illustrate? What's the name of that one?
Yeah. So that one's called Little White Cat. And at the very end, you got to, you're supposed to make this, it goes through all these feline transitions: lion, cheetah, tiger, leopard, and then at the very end, you got to try to get him back to the little white cat, which you do. And then it can repeat, like, hey, you want to do this adventure again? Then start over. And so it's been such a good hit that I made a sequel to it. I've already illustrated it. It's just been, where do I put my time here or there, that kind of thing. So I have Little White Horse that I'm working on. I might do like Little Black Bear, or, it's just the interactive series is really fun. And so, yeah, people can go to Amazon. They can purchase it there if they ever want to. I got all my titles there. Braggin' Dragon is the one I just was mentioning, where this Braggin' Dragon, he's got all these animal friends around him, but as he goes through page to page and isn't courteous to his friends, he's more boastful. You turn the page and you see a couple of these animals walk off the page, and it could be missed, until you reread it a few times. And you start to notice as you flip the pages, hey, he's getting fewer and fewer friends. And at the very end, he's like in the middle of bragging, hey, check out how I spin this yo-yo. And nobody's there. And he's like, hello? Where did everyone go? Fortunately, there was a crow. We call him Wise Crow in the book. Fortunately, there was Wise Crow, and he's like, hey, nobody likes a bragging dragon. But if you want to make amends, give compliments. And so then you flip the page, and he starts giving these compliments to all these friends, and he starts to build them. They start to come back around, because the truth of the matter is, it's hard to be around people who are always, self-centered. But when you give compliments, people are they want to surround themselves with positive energy. And at the very end of the book, there's a little spiel about why to give compliments, and a challenge to give. I can't remember. It was like maybe 6 compliments, 3 to a person 3 to a person you don't know, and 1 that may really need it, something like that.
Oh, very cool.
That's why I really like that one. I just think it's positive, and putting positivity out there is great.
Yeah, and it's simple enough that the little kids that are reading it or having the book read to them can pick up on it a little bit. It starts to teach you a little bit of, they come into the kitchen, mommy, you're pretty today.
Yeah,
simple things like that, but it easily goes outside the home.
Yeah, for sure. When I went to a school to do this book, I did a reading at one of the local schools. It was funny because the teacher told me after I'd left, they had given each other compliments the whole rest of the day. So it's funny, but it does help.
Now, I did want to jump into, how did you start up Authorpreneur, and where did that come from? I'm guessing it was probably some of the struggles with getting your own books published and figuring that process out.
It was a bit of that. So my last, it wasn't Bragging Dragon, but it was the book before that, I believe, Tweedledee Tweedledum, Alice in Wonderland characters. I was doing a local event where there was another picture book author, and I'm the kind of person that I just like to meet people. So I went over to her and introduced myself, and she was probably the only other picture book author at that event. There may have been one more, but I introduced myself. We became friends. We've done some events, and then we were both publishing one of our next books. We were going to get it offset printed. And then we had another friend that was like, hey, I want to, can you help me print this book too? And at the time, my friend that I had met, she said, we kind of got our first client here if you want to run with this. And so she's been in the business for a while. I've been in the business for a while. And so with that first sale, we built our website and dove in, and we're a few years, I think 2 years, maybe 2 years to 3 years new, building up by the snowball effect, people telling everyone about us and stuff. So we have a very large Facebook community that isn't under Authorpreneur Central, but under a different name. But yeah, that's kind of how we started. We just both wanted to share, like you said, what we've learned, but also it was just kind of a timing thing where it kind of fell into our hands and she brought up the idea. And so we went with it. And I think being an author, when people come to our business, just knowing they're working with authors that have done this before, I think there is some kind of a sense of peace to know that, hey, I'm in good hands.
Yeah, it's a little like going to an artist commune or a print shop where the people that are working or framing, the people that are doing the framing and everything else, they're also artists, so they totally get how the matting should be and what matting is going to complement the print. And it's not just somebody that's working behind the counter that says, hey, this mat costs you this much money, this one's this much money,
right.
pick whatever you want. No, that's really cool. Well, and another part too is that, and something that definitely stood out with me is that instinct to say yes to an opportunity and take a chance, right? Because this was not probably something that was right in your wheelhouse, and you weren't dreaming of opening up your own service. It was one of these things where, like you said, somebody said, "Hey, here's something that's kind of fallen into our laps. What do you think?" And saying yes and going for it just seems to be building a great business and a life for you.
Yeah, I treat every author's project like it was my own. So I do a lot of the formatting and design when someone needs that done. I do that, and I try to think, how would I want this book? And granted, not everyone sees it the same way, but I do treat every project as if it was my own, and I want to make the best presentation of it, because that's who I am, right? Like it's in my blood to try to go think that way.
Yeah, no, and that's been my experience with working with you guys over these last few weeks. Has been great feedback. I mean, questions that I didn't even know I needed to ask. You were presenting back to me and going, "Hey, well, what about this?" So it's been great as a first-time person coming through, having another author come to me and be like, "Hey, think about this, think about that. We need your input about this particular piece." One question I do have is, where do you guys fit in between the, let's say, standard publishing, your Penguin and, Simon Schuster,
Sure.
all that stuff, and then the publishing that we hear about with Amazon, right? Where it's like I upload a e-file and then somebody clicks it and Amazon prints it.
Right. So, right there, those are two opposite spectrums. You got your self-publishing, which is the Amazon. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I can't afford to print." Well, that's kind of a route you might take, is self-publishing on Amazon. All you need to do is sit down, write your book out, have it edited, have it formatted, and in a presentable format, and then you just upload it to Amazon. And if you're doing a picture book, I mean, there's one more step, which is hire the illustrator. And then the downside of print on demand is, one, you don't make as much money. Two, the quality of the books, really, really suffers. Print on demand books, they have thinner paper. They add some extra pages in the back where they actually stamp their logo, not their logo, but like it will say like published by Amazon or Ingram Spark. So we fit in more on the self-publishing end, but we do like to offset print overseas to keep things cheap. And you get to you make more money per book. So like if you have the money to spend, and a lot of times I tell authors, we have a minimum of for our hardcovers, it's 500. And if you think about it, that's not a whole lot of books to move. And if even my first book, Priscilla and the Sandman, I still have a couple boxes of it. But when I do my publishing, I don't think about it in terms of I need to move these books right now, or I'm in trouble. Because if you're going to be in that situation, you probably don't want to spend a bunch of money to print. But I see it as an investment in myself. I know I'm going to make the money back. I know things take time, hitting markets, going to school visits and stuff like that. So we kind of fit in between Amazon and your traditional publishing. Now, why not go traditional publishing? Well, I do want to be traditionally published. I would like to be, but it is a tough racket, because everyone who has an idea or is a writer, they want to be published. And so the process of that, first you find either an agent that produces books similar to yours, or two, you find a publisher that publishes books similar to yours. So you have to do a lot of this homework to say, okay, my book is like this person's book. Who represents this book? Who printed this? Who published this book? And who's the agent of this author? So you do the homework. After you do the homework, you work on your query letter. And your query letter, there's a format, a special format. You got to kind of research and figure out what this person might want in a query letter, because query letters are tough. So anyways, you work on that query letter, you send it to the agent or the publisher, and keep in mind, not every publisher is open to submissions. So that's already like, you got to do your homework. Is this publisher, can I submit to them? Because if you can't, then you're wasting your time. So once your query letter is done, you send it to the agent that fits your style and represents your books, or to a publisher that also publishes that kind of book. Normally, big publishers don't want to be queried at the same time as another publisher. So, and if you do, they even want that in the query letter. So hey, I'm sending this to you guys and to these guys, Penguin and to Simon and Schuster, whatever the case may be. They like to know. Then from that time where you send that query letter, you got to wait about 3 months for some kind of reply. So once you get your rejection, or if you're really, really lucky, you'll get, your acceptance. But if you get your rejection, then it's kind of one of those rinse and repeat. Okay, let's find the next publisher, the next agent, and you wait that other 3 months, and then another 3 months. And then let's say you have that big break, that traditional publisher says, hey, we want your book. We're going to give you an advance. So they give you an advance. The advance could be, you're a first-time author, so it could be $1,000, could be $500, could be $5,000. It really depends on the content and how well they think, this is sellable probably. After that advance is paid, you don't make any money till all their investments are paid, and then you can get royalties from that. So let's say you're picked up by a publisher, which is cool. I would love to be picked up by a publisher, right? But let's say I'm going to get $5,000 and I don't see royalties till after that's paid off. Well, if the book doesn't sell like I hope, I get $5,000. That's it. I don't own the copyright. The book's not mine anymore. So that's kind of the downfall of going that way. Now, when you self-publish, you own the rights. They're your rights. You can print the book as many times as you want, and you get 100% of the profits, depending on your contract with your illustrator or whoever else you're working with. So, and just so you know, let's say they pick up the book. This publisher says, "Yeah, we loved the idea." Well, you're looking at about another 2 years, depending on probably if it's a chapter book or a picture book. But with a picture book, you have an illustrator that's going to take some time illustrating, and then it's going to be about 2 years from the time they accept it to the time the book comes out, which is, for me, for example, Brag and Dragon, I try to find a book that some publishers and an agent that would like it. I did query it a little bit, but after I get a couple rejections, I kind of just, I'll just do it myself then, and I'll just self-publish. So that's kind of the downsides of, going the traditional publishing route versus self-publishing. A lot of people say, if I get published by this Penguin, they're going to market it, they're going to do all these things, and I'm going to sell lots of books. It's hardly the case, unless you're really one of the lucky few. But think about it. You're Penguin. Are you going to put a lot of marketing into a first-time author, or are you going to put a lot of money into your big-selling authors already, like Eric Carle? Where are you going to put your marketing expenses?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the podcasts and the people that I've been listening to, let's say your Dan Millers, your Dave Ramsey's, your Michael Hyatt. Michael Hyatt's different. He comes out of the publishing world. But a number of these folks definitely had the experience, and then talk about too, about, the way publishing has changed is it's great if you have a podcast. You have a podcast and you're getting 100,000 downloads an episode, and you've got that platform, or you are lucky enough, I don't know, lucky might not be, you had an event around you, like Solenberger landing the jet in the Hudson. You have something like that. Yeah, you're a name, you're already known, you've built your own platform. There's not much heavy lifting that the publisher has to do at that point. But to your point, hey, Penguin or whoever, they're going to, they look at my manuscript, they might absolutely love it. It could be a great manuscript. Nobody knows who I am. So now they've got to spend a lot of money trying to educate people, and then hope that you probably get into your second and third runs before you really start getting the payback for those investments.
And I do think if you are looking to be traditionally published, if that's a dream of yours, and I would love to be, don't get me wrong, even though I'm tooting the self-publishing horn, I kind of want to be a hybrid myself, where if I have an idea, I want to say, I'm going to run this because I want to have control of the illustrations. I want to be able to do that. But when you hand off your manuscript to a publisher, it's theirs, and they get to make the decisions and stuff. And kind of lost my train of thought of where we're going with that. But
it becomes a financial transaction. You are, your manuscript is a product that the publisher is looking to make money off of. So you don't, unless you have the big name, you don't have, much of a say in what the cover is going to look like. So
exactly.
Yeah, it definitely becomes a financial transaction. And I don't necessarily blame them, but to your point, we live in a world now where this self-publishing can really kind of bridge that gap a little bit. It maintains the flexibility. It starts to get somebody's name out there. And then there's more flexibility, and it allows more people, I think, to get into the game, so to speak. So,
yeah,
we got,
I was going to say,
go ahead.
To further your point, like you yourself, like 20, 30 years ago, I mean, I'm pretty old myself, but, having your own podcast that's just unfathomable, right? Like you even the film industry, like I wanted to go to film school, and it was like super expensive because it was still on film. And nowadays all you need is a digital camera, and they're super cheap. And basically what I'm getting at is, like, the whole self-publishing thing, let's say 30 years ago, may have been a lot tougher than now. But now with social media, you have those Kickstarter campaigns where you can try to get funding that way. You got school events. So it's not just, a local thing anymore. We're talking about, you can build an audience. And so, yeah, self-publishing is it's not a bad thing like it probably seemed to be 30 years ago.
Well, and I like the idea of maintaining some of that control. And I think people would be really surprised to hear the names of people that are really big right now that initially had their first books come out and were self-published. I mentioned Dan Miller for sure. I mean, he's a mentor, and he's somebody that I'm, in his groups and have done some training with him. His first book was basically a binder with some cassette tapes. And then when he got sold enough of that, he went in and did a self-publishing run. And then as that book took off, that's when he started getting the attention of traditional publishing.
Yeah. And he already had his following,
Right. And then at that point he had control. But
I think that's where I was going when I lost the train of thought, was just, if you're looking to be traditionally published, if you do want to work on your, following, that probably would be very enticing, to a traditional publisher. Somebody who has 100,000 followers followers versus somebody who has 1,000. I mean, that's 100,000 books they could sell potentially.
Right.
So
They're looking at those numbers, and they'll run a figure of like, even if 10% of that audience buys, then we've moved X number of units at this price. And then,
right.
It's like I said, it becomes a financial transaction at that
And
point.
alternatively, self-publishing, if you have that many followers, self-publishing, would probably be even a better route too, because you're cutting out that middleman, the publisher, and you would be able to soak in those profits, and it'd probably pay better than the advance would.
Now, one question I've got for you is, what types of books do you work with? You and I are working on my first book. It's a children's book, and so that's been exciting. But what other types of books does your organization help people publish?
Yeah, we do all kinds of books. I would have to say most of our clients are children's book authors, but we get young adults. We have one client who does chapter books for young readers. We have one that does novels for adults, and another one who does some kind of self-help. He did a book about being an orphan. So I mean, we have all a large range, but we do have the vast majority being children's book authors. And that's, because we do offer illustrations, and like I don't know if I told you on the phone before, but we're kind of a one-stop shop where we want to pick up the slack wherever somebody needs us. Let's say you finish your manuscript, you say, I'm kind of stuck now. What do I do now? And I can say, well, probably need it edited. If you want to use one of our editors, you could go to our web. It's they're not Authorpreneur Central editor, but it's kind of an affiliate editor. You can use that one, or if you want to find your own, go ahead. So we're not here to pressure authors. We're not here to take the glory. We just want to be there to help whenever they need us. And so oftentimes there are authors like that don't know how to format their book, or they don't know an illustrator. So we're a perfect match for that kind of thing. So if you have any listeners who are writing a book and they're just stuck and they're like, I just don't know what to do next, they could email me, give me a call, and I can just point them in the right direction. If it's something that they can't do, then we pick it up.
Folks, I'll be sure to put links not only to Nathan's email. He's been so generous to provide direct contact to people, but also to Authorpreneur Central, so that everybody can jump in there, take a look around at the services, see what, if anything jumps out that could be of service. I know he and his organization been super helpful with my project.
Thanks.
A question that I've got for you too is, here's the scenario, and this isn't necessarily my own case, but somebody that has been putzing along a little bit with, writing a fiction book or a nonfiction book. They're starting to get it wrapped up, starting to go through the editing process. Do you suggest at that point that they start also thinking about and building out, their platform, right? Like, hey, for their own self-promotion for things. So maybe looking at the URL that might be associated with the book and getting that, or is that really something that would be much further down the line?
And I don't recommend personally. I mean, I know people do it. They get the URL for that exact title. And that's not a bad thing. I wouldn't make that my bread and butter, because if you're going to keep writing books, then, you're going to have to be creating these pages for each initial book, which you can do. I personally just have my author name, my author website, and then all my books are listed there. When I make a new book, I don't have to really create anything else they just go to andersroseberg.com and that's it. So, but it is, I would, I don't know if you have to go out and get like a business email or anything like that necessarily, especially if you're a first time author. It does look a little more professional, but at the end of the day, you're self-publishing, and I think it's not a huge deal. I would probably recommend getting a website with your author name, as simple as that is. And then from there, you can always, if it's not something you don't want to keep, you can always remove it later. But I mean, I don't really send people to my Facebook group and things, to my Facebook page or anything like that. And I'm not gonna say I'm the best marketer. That's where I lack in my, I lack marketing skills. So I wouldn't take any of my advice as far as marketing, but just know that when people get the book and they see your name, to type that name in and find the link right there at the top is powerful, I think, right? As opposed to, because that's what I would do. I don't know if I would go to Facebook and type in a fan page necessarily for that author, but maybe people do. Is that something you would do, Greg? Would you like go? Would you go to Facebook and type in their name, or would you?
Probably not Facebook. And like you said, I think it may be something like in my case, and I'm not necessarily doing this, but it would be like I would check out, see if gregpayne.com is used. And if that's used, then maybe I can go gregpayneauthor.com and see if that's
exactly. One thing that I did, I have a very common name. I had 3 kids with the same name in my middle school. And so Googling, Nathan Andersen would have been a terrible, not a terrible, but it would have been, I think, a mistake to put my author name as Nathan Andersen, because I would be lost. I would be lost in the vast sea of Nathan Andersons. And so I created a pen name, and there's nothing wrong with pen names. Dr. Seuss did it, and they all do it, right? So I also recommend that if you're going to be writing cross platforms, let's say you're doing let's say you're doing kind of adult content, and then you're doing a picture book, you really don't want those names to be kind of tied together. So you want to probably have a pen name, and there's nothing wrong with the pen name. So I picked Anders Roseberg, Anders from Andersen, and Roseberg was kind of a mix between my daughter's middle name and my grandma's name. And so I Googled that, like you said, I Googled it. I'm like, okay, there's not a single Anders Roseberg out there. People are going to find me. It's going to be easy because I'm the only one. And so you probably do want to think about that thing. And I don't know if you've ever Googled Greg Payne. I don't know how common it is, or if there's an author already named Greg Payne, but yeah.
I can't remember if I've done that or not. I want to say I have, but I don't remember the results off the top of my head. That's why I was saying, a speaker conference I was at, if I was putting a speaker website together and Greg Payne's already taken, like I said, it might be gregpaynespeaker.com or speakergregpayne.com, something that would be, that it makes it a little unique.
Right. But even with that, right. So somebody picks up your book and they type Greg Payne, most likely gregpaynespeaker.com is not going to be the first of the list. It's probably going to be some of those other ones, right? Because they're not going to type Greg Payne speaker necessarily. They're going to type just your author name. So it's something to consider.
Yeah.
I'm not saying go out and get a pen name unless you absolutely need it. I like it. I personally like it just because, again, my name was very common. And now I'm the only Anders Rosebergs out there.
Sure.
There was some Ander. There's some people named Ander without the S. There's some people with Rosenberg. But as far as Anders Roseberg, I was the only one that I could find, especially when you put author next to it.
A question I've got for you, and here's a scenario because it's probably some folks in the audience listening may be running into this situation is grandfather, grandmother that's thinking about maybe writing out an autobiography or a family history. Again, these are probably, unless you're tied to some kind of a noteworthy event, it may just be something that's for consumption amongst the immediate family, maybe some of the extended family. What would your recommendations be for somebody in that scenario as far as writing, editing, publishing?
Right. So and I would ask most authors, what is the main focus? What is your goal? Is it to make money? Is it to get it out to as many people as you want to, as not as many people as you want, but to get it out there to everybody? But in this situation, with you saying, they're just looking to, have it be a family history, probably somebody, within the immediate family or extend a little bit of the extended family, whatever. Just I would say write after it's nice and written down and you feel you got a good polished, semi-polished manuscript. You would need to get it edited. I know a lot of people, they will want to skip the editing, but I tell you, there's been, even in my picture books that are only 500 words, like I send it to my sisters who also help me edit. And they're like, yeah, you missed this, you missed this. So I actually send it to a professional editor, and then I have my sisters look at it. Then I go back to the editor with questions. Well, what about this? What about that? So that's just a picture book. And I can't imagine kind of the grammar editing mistakes in something bigger. Now, if you are writing it just for family and the editing's not something you care too much about, download Grammarly. Grammarly is a powerful tool. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically it's a plugin that goes on your browser, and you can actually go to Grammarly.com, copy text inside it, and it does much better than the average spell check. And it's free. You can upgrade for a certain amount, and it will do even more. It's even more powerful, but I opt for the free one. And at the very minimum, you're doing a Grammarly spell check, and at least, some questionable things are taken care of. After you have that either edited by an editor or Grammarly and you're in a happy place, you want to get it formatted. And what formatting does is it takes your manuscript, which was probably written in Word doc, 8.5 by 11, probably double spaced or single spaced, depending on who it was that wrote it and how they set it up. But there's certain things that formatters know to do to your manuscript to make it look presentable. And that can be the fonts. Let's say the table of contents doesn't have page numbers at the bottom. Maybe you want drop caps, which are very pleasing to the eye. Like at the beginning of the chapter, your first T will be extra big, if you know what I'm saying. That's called the drop cap.
Yeah.
Your chapter headings and all that stuff. Like there's no right way to format, but there are incorrect ways to format. And if you just say, oh, I'm happy with it on my Word doc, maybe that's good for family history, but you still need to format it to the right page size and that would be the next step. So you'd have to go to, if somebody came to me and said, hey, I did my family history, I'm ready to go, I would ask them, all right, well, what size are you doing it in? Here's the sizes that Amazon allows for these kind of books, because there are certain sizes when you do print on demand. And then from there, we would format it to that size and make it look presentable. We give you the files that you would upload to Amazon. And we have clients that are like, I don't know where to go. Well, I send them links to Amazon, tell them to create an account, tell them, there's some people we've had to have phone conversations that kind of walk them through a little bit more. We've had some clients that really needed us to help out, where they wanted us to log in and stuff like that, where we upload for them. So It kind of depends on the person, but that's what you would do in that situation. You would get it edited, formatted, and then uploaded, and you'd have to create a cover, as well. And I know Amazon offers free cover creation tools. But if they couldn't do the formatting and they came to us, that's again one of those a la carte services where I'd say we will design your cover and we will also format for this much. And I would ask them, what do you want on the cover? What do you see for the cover? Do you want, we would go back and forth of what they wanted and give them exactly what they wanted. So that's what we would do.
That's a lot of great information there because, like I said, I know a fair amount of folks, you start to get, a little bit of tread on the tire and you start thinking about either writing out a family history that so that it can be passed on, or, writing your own autobiography so grandkids and great grandkids have a little bit of a connection. So this is going to be super helpful for folks.
And just for people out there that are in that boat, once you publish to Amazon, it doesn't actually cost you anything. There are some print-on-demand sites like Ingram Spark where you have a fee up front. It's probably like $50 to $100 where you send them the files and then I don't know what they do, but they process it. With Amazon, there are no fees associated with it. You would just upload the files, and once it's ready, you could have them send you a proof copy before you have it published. And then you could look through your proof copy and make any changes that you need. I personally have had some issues with Amazon, and that's with the picture book. The issues that I had, I don't know, would be on the same issues. Like mine had my picture book had like lines through it, and I don't know exactly how that happened, but it was messed up on the file, not my file, but after I sent it to them, somehow it got some kind of corruption or something, and it was on my picture book, which was pretty wild. But basically, it doesn't cost you anything to publish on Amazon, and then you would just send your family, hey, I published this family history on Amazon. Download the book. You could have the price where you don't make a lot of money, where it's just basically cost. Maybe you're making, because when you fill all that information, it will tell you how much money you're making per book. So you could always have that be 30 cents. And you could say, I'm not really making any money. I just want to share this with you. So download it, or if you had the money and you wanted to just purchase a bunch of copies yourself for cheap and then distribute them for free to your family, that would be also something. But Amazon, I think they were only doing paperback up until last year. And I think they started hardcover. And I can't remember the page count, but I want to say it's got to be over 70 something pages to be hardcover. Don't quote me on that, but I do know there's some stipulation where picture books don't apply. So if you're trying to get a picture book, print on demand picture book, you don't go, a hardcover picture book. I don't know if I said that, hardcover children's book, print on demand. You wouldn't go to KDP because they wouldn't do it. But you can do your paperbacks all through KDP. And KDP used to be strictly ebook. And I don't know if you remember, but Amazon had their sister company called CreateSpace, but now CreateSpace became KDP. So now your paperbacks and your ebooks are both done on KDP.
I know, Nathan, I've had you on for a while. Is there anything about Authorpreneur Central or publishing in general that you would like to talk about that maybe I hadn't asked you?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about when you work with us, you own your copyrights, even the illustrations, it's done as a work for hire. So our illustrators are able to use them as their portfolio, but they're not theirs. And so as a first time publishing author, not having to deal with royalties, because I know a lot of times they'll create a contract with somebody and be like, okay, you get X amount %. And that's nice and fine when you're in the traditional publishing world, in my opinion, because you have somebody working those numbers out and sending you a check. But it's not. I don't think it's real feasible for a self-publishing author. I think it's better to do just a one-time contract with these illustrators, and then you own the copyrights to them. Because if you don't, you're going to be getting permission to put them here or put them there, or to write them here, or to adjust this illustration here, right? Because you wouldn't own the copyright. So when you work with Authorpreneur Central, we don't take the copyrights. We're not a publisher, and I want to make that clear. We're not a publisher, but we are a tool for you to self-publish. We give you the strength, the strength, and the tools to bring your projects to life. And with that said, I want to make sure authors are also aware of vanity publishers. Now, a vanity publisher they don't call themselves vanity publishers because that would look bad, but they will come and say, hey, we are a publisher and we want to publish your book. It's only going to cost you $5,000, right? And with that $5,000, we're going to do this and this. We'll do the illustrations and we'll give you 20 copies. So a vanity publisher is charging you $5,000, and it's not like they're going to promote it or anything. They may put it on a website or something, but they're called vanity publishers for that very reason. Is I feel that they take advantage of authors, because most authors are like, oh, they want to publish me. That feels good. I want to be published, and I want to call myself a published author. But oftentimes these vanity publishers, they what's it called? Where they take corners, and they skip corners or whatever, where maybe the illustrations aren't the greatest, or maybe when they give you those 20 copies, those are just print on demand copies. They're not offset beautifully, beautiful offset copies. So steer away from vanity publishers. If you are in one of these positions where you are like looking for a publisher, you need to do it the old-fashioned way with the query letters, as I mentioned. If you find a vanity publisher that is telling you that you need to pay $5,000 to publish a book, I highly recommend you just take it on yourself, because with that money, you could print 1,000, 500 to 1,000 books already. You're going to have you're going to own the copyrights, which many publishers say that you still own anyway, but you're going to have control of your illustrations. And just going through our services, even though the services might add up to a similar fee, you're going to have 500 beautiful offset books to go with it. And I would just steer clear of the vanity publishers. And they're not going to say on their website, we're a vanity publisher. You'll know that they're a vanity publisher because they're not offering you an advance. They're not saying we would like to publish you, so here's $5,000 for your story. They're saying, oh, we'll publish you. You got to give us $5,000.
Okay, important difference there for sure.
I don't know if there's anything else. I had some marketing, for those who are looking to do some marketing. You could go to schools, book signings, small local libraries, local bookstores, and then for funding, there's Kickstarter, where if your listeners don't know, Kickstarter is kind of one of those things where people pledge an amount for the project to take off. And I've done Kickstarters for my own books. I've had some success. There's some secrets to being successful, and it's not all about just having a great idea, because great ideas can be a dime a dozen. So you need to kind of know how to make that Kickstarter goal happen. And it doesn't just happen with a great idea. It could, right? It could be like if you did the right video, if you did the right Kickstarter campaign and the right words and everything, that could be done really well. And maybe it could blow up. I'm not saying because I want your listeners to know that it's not all a one size fits all. You probably know this. Not every author, you can be an author with 100,000 followers, and if your book is not that great, you might not sell so much. You could also be an author with few followers, but for some reason, this book hit mainstream in a way that they just really like, and it went well. Maybe it was a topic. So it's definitely not a one size fits all thing. The author, being an author.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, it's a little like music industry. If you're looking to sell units, it's time and place and what's going on and culture at the time, and you may get lucky, and it's just a great convergence of those things that come together, and all of a sudden you're a best-selling author.
Yep. But it does happen, to the few. But even with some of my great ideas that I thought would take off, because at the end of the day, these projects that are dear to us and your project, we do hope that they would take off, and we do want them to, be in the hands of as many people as we can get them in. And so having that hope is one thing, but you need to also think realistically and set yourself up in a way where you got to work too. It's not something that, if it does well and it goes viral, that's great, but you also need to prepare yourself for if it doesn't. That's
super important. Is that just, I forget, somebody had a percentage for a successful book is, the writing the book is a small percentage, the publishing, the editing, everything, and the marketing and getting out and hustling and letting people know about the book makes up most of the effort for getting books out there.
That's very true. And I want just another note, awards are great. I do like awards. I want all my picture books, all my books, I try to at least get one award. So I'll submit them until I get something. But I've never had some uptick of, moving thousands and thousands of books to get an award. And I've won the Purple Dragonfly and Mom's Choice. And there's a few others I won. We have a local award called Best of State here in Utah. I've won that twice. So it's more of, I would say for me personally, awards are nice. I like them just to have that sticker on their book, because when you're, there with other authors, I think that's where it makes a difference, because they'll see a sticker and be like, what's this? And they pick it up, as opposed to a book that may not have one. But other than that, it's kind of a bragging right. I've never seen, like I said, an uptick of sales, like where it was super noticeable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So.
And I think, I looking through my list, I guess we kind of covered all our tracks, unless you got anything else you want to discuss.
I think you've given us a lot of great information here, and especially very useful information for anybody that's thinking about writing, whether it's a children's book, a fiction book, nonfiction, what have you. You gave us a lot of good information to be thinking about, and a lot of great information about your company. I definitely appreciate you being on the Cool Grandpa podcast and spending all this time with us. This has been great for my education as well as the education of our listeners.
I appreciate you having me, and any of your listeners who are in a position where they're stuck, please reach out, and I'm happy to take a phone call with you and kind of just guide you in a direction where you're not.
That's really generous. Have a good night, Nathan.
Thank you, Greg.
That was a great conversation with Nathan. I so enjoyed all the information that he shared with us. He really took the mystery out of publishing. He helped to really create this idea that, we can publish on whatever scale we want. We can certainly send a document over to Amazon to have it published on demand. We can go through and try to get in with a big time traditional publisher, or we can find self-publishing, or maybe a combination of the two or three. So it was very great to hear all these different tools that are open to us. So my challenge is, if you've got a book inside you and you've been stalling because you've been thinking too hard about step 3, 4, and 5 in the process, now's the opportunity to take what Nathan told you, lay it out, make sure you get your book done, and then start the editing process, start to generate buzz around your project, even if it's within your own family, and then be able to find the best method possible to get your project printed and into the hands of those people that could best use it. Hey, I am excited and I'm fired up to hear what projects you're going to be working on. So please shoot me an email at greg@cool-grandpa.com, or go to the show notes and leave myself and Nathan a comment. We would love to hear what projects you're working on. So until next time, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.